Namaste and good evening, everyone. I, Ritika Gupta, Assistant Director at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, extend my heartiest welcome to you all to IMPRI #Policy Talk. Today, we are here for a special talk on India's Smart Cities Mission Lighthouses. The talk is being organized by Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies at IMPRI as part of the series, The State of Cities #City Conversation. The speakers for today are Professor Manoj Parmar and Dr. Binti Singh. I would now like to request Dr. Soumyadip Chattopadhyay, who is Associate Professor at Visva-Bharati University, Santiniketan, and Senior Visiting Fellow at IMPRI, to introduce the program and our eminent speakers and panelists further. Sir, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika, and good evening to all of you. At the very beginning, let me give you a brief overview about the program and today's talk. And we all know that India aspires to modernize through 100 smart cities and achieve higher living standards. And they are projected as planned models for other cities to evaluate and position themselves as growth engines. And the government has devised specific criteria for smart cities and encourages intra-city competition and cooperation with the private partners. And private consultant firms have been engaged for preparing the concept plan to consolidate the city's future vision and a sustainable revenue model to attract the private participation. And Government of India also put emphasis on the citizens-driven smart city proposals from the very beginning. So smart city initiative now involves a growing number of stakeholders, right from the municipal governments, then states, then consultancies, then private corporations, and so on. And also the technology and innovation hold growth potential to contribute to sustainable development in the cities if we use them in the right way. So we know that 45 cities have operational integrated command and control centers set up under the Smart Cities mission, which are expected to be quite useful to coordinate the urban essential activities, especially during the pandemic. However, the Smart City mission has not had great results even after the completion of almost 5 years. Even the budgetary provision for Smart City mission in current financial year remains the same. So essentially the Smart City project, since its introduction in India, has garnered both applause and criticism. And despite this mixed response, I think the Smart City proposal has successfully revered the very imagination of the Indian cities. So the central question is what smart cities are if they cannot help us live a good, healthy life. And so it is important for us to understand the implementation of the Smart Cities mission in India and how it transforms and mutates the existing governance structures and the progressive policies. And with these aims, our Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies at IMPRI, we have been engaging with the top urban experts, both from within India and outside India, to discuss and deliberate on some of these issues. And today we are delighted to have with us Professor Manoj Parmar and Dr. Binti Singh. And Professor Manoj Parmar, both of them, they are a well-known established urban scholar. Professor Manoj Parmar is the director, professor, and the former dean of master's program in urban design and urban conservation, KRVIA, the Kamala Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture and Environmental Studies, Mumbai. And his academic interests lie in the areas of architecture and urbanism. And he has been in private practice of architecture, urban design since 1992. And he has worked on numerous private and public housing and institutional commissions across the country. And his work was discussed at UDRI and CEPT Ahmedabad. And he has also co-authored 2 books. Most recent one is The Smart City in India, Laboratory Trajectory or Paradigm, which is, and Resilience Paradigm and Southern Urbanism, which is published by the Routledge, UK. And also we have today as speaker, Dr. Binti Singh, who is the urban sociologist and associate professor at KRVIA, Mumbai. And her research interest lies mainly in the areas of climate action, urban theory, sociology, design, planning, policy, governance, and so on. And to her credit, also quite a few number of books she has already written. And the most recent one is How Will India Fix Her Urban Future, which she has co-authored with Mr. Samin Unale. And also this book, which I just mentioned, The Smart City in India, Laboratory, Paradigm and Trajectory, which is published by Routledge, is co-authored with Professor Manoj Parmar. And also apart from that, she has many articles she has written in almost all the leading journals in the urban studies. And also she is the book series editor of Routledge and associate editor of Oxford Urbanist. And apart from that, today we have as discussant or panelist, Professor Tathagata Chatterji, who is the Professor of Urban Management and Governance, Xavier University, Bhubaneswar. We are also joined by Professor Gopa Samanta of University of Burdwan. And we also have Mr. Samin Unale, Joint Commissioner, Department of Municipal Administration, Government of Maharashtra, will be shortly joining with us. And Mr. Tikender Singh Panwar, who is the former Deputy Mayor of Shimla and the Senior Visiting Fellow of IMPRI. So he will also shortly join this conversation series. And with this short introduction, let me now invite Dr. Binti Singh and Professor Manoj Parmar to deliver their talk. It's over to you, Dr. Singh.
Can you hear us, sir?
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I feel very honored to be here, and let me first take the opportunity to extend my gratitude to IMPRI, doing tremendous work in the field of policy and research, and also dissemination of that work, which I think is very important, because we do good work, but most of the time it remains within the confines of the universities and doesn't get disseminated. So I congratulate IMPRI for that, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to discuss our research with you, so that your comments can help us improve and show us the way forward. So without wasting time, I'll straight away jump into the presentation for today. It's called India's Smart Cities Mission Lighthouses, which is kind of resonates with the title of our book, and which was published by Routledge in 2019. It's called Smart City in India. I have a copy of the book, so I can show it to you. It's called Smart City in India, Urban Laboratory, Paradigm or Trajectory, and a little bit about what got started that ultimately culminated in this book. So the idea of the book actually incubated a couple of years before, and when I was working on Professor, and I have been writing a lot on urban sectors and things like that, urbanism, those kind of issues for a long time. And so my earlier work was called Divided City, Ideological and Policy Contestations in Contemporary Urban India. And while researching for that book and the other one, which is more of an ethnographic work on the second tier city of Lucknow in Uttar Pradesh, that was the time when it was precisely 2014-15. And in 2015, June, that the Smart City Mission was launched. And along came a lot of other policies like Hriday, Amrut, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Digital India, ODF, and so many of them. So the urban landscape was very vibrant. I mean, we were researching for a long time GNURM and how it was standing on the three pillars of governance, basic services, and infrastructure. So those were the three pillars that we urban researchers have been researching all along. And then suddenly this, there was I will not call it a paradigm shift or anything, but yes, this large program in the urban landscape. So that kind of triggered this research. And since I was in Lucknow and I could see it actually evolving and urbanizing, changing in front of me, and with stark contrast between the old city and the new city, and how the city was responding to the forces of globalization, and how the new policies were rolled out, and how even citizens movement and all of that was taking place, that kind of to give shape to this idea of what a smart city would be. So kind of Lucknow was kind of grappling with this identity, whether it should be a smart city, whether it should be an economic hub, whether it should be the cultural capital of India as the smart city or vision of smart city plan. So yeah, so from that, that is how it started. And I was also writing articles for Business World Smart City. So one fine day, it so happened that the editor of Routledge told me to write a book on smart city in India, because a book on an academic reflection on that subject would be, it was imminent. And I thought that as a sociologist, I was not really equipped to do full justice to the subject. So Professor Parmar was invited on board to bring in the spatial, the visual, and the architectural perspectives. And that you will see in one of the chapters and also the rest of the book, which has added tremendous value to this research. So yes, the changes that have been happening since 2015 onwards, it makes us believe that India does not live in villages anymore. And yeah, so I'll just give you some statistics. So I think you are already aware of it. So India will have 7 megacities and numerous urban centers in the second tier cities. Now we call them, according to the new EURPFI guidelines, we call them historic medium-sized cities. So Kanpur, Pune, Jaipur, Coimbatore, Ahmedabad, all of these would be new emerging urban centers. Yes. Could we go to the next slide, please? So urbanization and urbanism in India today are inspired by global symbols. You can see these so upcoming infrastructure projects and growing levels of consumerism, widespread use of digital satellite communications, and aspirations and linkages as well. And this global character of India's cities not only restricted to the high-end malls and real estate markets or the posh cityscape, residential and commercial spaces that we see in and around us, but it's also very much part of the blight that we see in our slums or in dilapidated inner cities, historic cores. Okay, next slide, please. I will quickly run you through some interesting facts. I mean, I don't call them statistics. I don't even call them facts. I call them stories, because with each fact, there is a story and a backstory. So there was this interesting report from in 2016 retrospective report, which states how in recent years, India has surpassed US as the second largest smartphone market, while also sharply outpacing US in the mobile app market. So increasingly, India is seen as a growing security and surveillance market with varied government departments like the police, traffic management agencies, and all of that really tapping onto it. All right. And of course, interesting to note that it's chasing down the next 100 million internet users in small towns. So the small and medium towns is really the focus of study for us urban researchers. And it is no more the mega cities. It's no more the story of Calcutta, Bombay, Madras, and these Bangalore. It's more about these emerging urban centers, which kind of are units of analysis for us. So smart city is, as you all know, is the new paradigm driving urban policy and governance in India, as in other parts of the world. And we can see this, the move towards data-driven governance systems. It's very much visible in front of us, and especially became more prominent in the last 2 years that we are in this kind of a pandemic situation. The good thing about it is that now that the mission is in its second phase, we are, yeah, so this slide is all about what is the smart city mission. So yeah, maybe we can go back to the earlier slide.
Ma'am, this one?
No, the earlier one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, please be here. Yes, yes, yes. So Smart City Mission is all about deploying technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, robotics, machine learning, big data, and vision to build the smart cities that are governed on the foundation of data that is constantly collected and run on data-driven systems. And now we have the integrated command and control centers in front of us. So we know what it looks like and how this centralized management and how this data would be collected and how it would be then help to bring about efficiency in governance. Uh, so again, in the union budget of 2018, the SAM aimed to build 100 smart cities. Of course, we are in the second phase. Would you please go back to the first, the previous, no, the next one. No, I was, yes, yes, please. I'm just reading it out that how technology is the pillar of the smart city mission and how the SCM that was first pronounced in the union budget of 2018 and how it aimed to build state-of-the-art amenities like command and control centers, solar rooftops, intelligent transport with a focus on automation, communication, IT, machine learning, AI, and robotics. So it was technology that was the fulcrum of all this, and it aimed to create better economic opportunities, enable transparency in governance, and institute better delivery systems for better and smarter urban spaces that are essentially the goals of the smart city mission. And of course, there has been a convergence of a lot of other policies, urban policies, along with the smart city mission, namely Amrut, which is Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, Swachh Bharat Mission, Digital India, Hriday, which is to do with heritage, and ODF, and many more that I have not listed, but it comes in a table later on. So for the first time, subjected cities to rigorous transformation. Of course, I should not say first time because rigorous transformation had already started with the JNNURM program in 2005 to 12, but this kind of carried it forward. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the convergence of the urban policies in India since 2015. So it talks about the schemes on one hand, the what the scheme is about, and then the geographic area, the focus area. So we have Smart City Mission, Amrut, Swachh Bharat Mission, Hriday, urban transport, and all of that I have named. I think Arjun, I think we have missed out a couple of points, slides before. Yeah, can you go back just a bit
This one only, or just before that?
before that? Yeah,
This?
this is done. Okay, this is done. Okay. Okay, so yeah, wait. Yeah, please keep
Actually,
hold.
the PPT is timed, so it is changing automatically.
Oh, yeah, I know, I know. Yeah,
Yes.
actually, we got it recorded, pre-recorded, because we presented this in several other
I
forums
am
as well.
I am on it. No problem. Yes.
Yeah. So what the thing is that since these policies and this subject kind of subjected cities to transformation, and the transformation was not only urban transformation, was not only spatial, it was also at the level of culture. So, for example, I'll just draw your attention to this article which mentions that Amazon executives say that the 70% of their business come from small towns. Again, reiterating this point that, you know, small and medium towns have suddenly become very important now, an important market and also an important unit of analysis for researchers. So what exactly is happening with the small town, small and medium town? How are they changing? How are they responding to all these changes and the forces that have been subjected, that they have been subjected to? So Flipkart and other e-commerce companies have worked out the intricacies of sending millions of shipments to customers in small towns. So this is the way that how the demand has spurred up in recent years, you know. So just a fact that I wanted to share with you. Okay, the next slide, please. Yeah, no, just the previous one, the smart city. Okay, I can just tell it. I think you are all familiar with because you are all researchers from that area. So yeah, smart city stands on it has two main components. One is the area based development and one is the pan-city solutions, which are more to do with how you deploy smart technologies for smart transport, for safety surveillance, and better service delivery and all of that. So each city, which is declared as a smart city, then goes about charting its own program of what it wants to envision as a smart city plan, and then goes about implementing it. There is a very integrate institutional framework that is put in place, and stakeholders like citizens are also kind of consulted to in the initial drafts consultation processes, and then the firms are invited, and then there is a PAC, and that's how they go about it. So yes, so that's the institutional edifice. And in this book, we also discuss, so our research was done on two levels. One was the secondary level research, which was to do with collating all the secondary information that we could lay our hands on. So that included vision documents, policy documents, the smart city plans of various cities, newspaper articles, whatever was being said about and whatever was being talked about. So that was our secondary literature review. And for the primary level research, we did detailed case studies of Lucknow, Varanasi, and Jaipur. So based on that, chapter 5 and 6, we raise and highlight some issues. It is just an academic reflection, and we take a step back in order to understand how this smart city mission is kind of guiding the cities of tomorrow in India, and how what path they have charted upon themselves and how they're moving. So those are the questions that we raise, and of course, let me add that this research is far from over. We are just started it, and we are still continuing with it. Our book on resilience and resilience and southern urbanism is a carry forward of that, where we have tried to include more studies, and we also plan a sequel of smart city in India because the mission is in second phase right now, and we are really interested to understand what are these urban transformations that are happening, because I think it is a matter of research, it is a matter of investigation, and India is so diverse. We really cannot have generalized ideas about any particular subject matter, so to speak. So now I'll ask Professor Parmar to give his.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think from
I
here
can
you
start
can.
from here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Thanks, Binti. I think she covered the entire institutional edifice that are necessitated for this project on smart city mission. What this book is actually trying to do is to understand those mechanisms. At the same time, attempting to look at several other planning paradigms which were imagined earlier, prior to smart city mission. And also it is bringing the entire discourse of, medium towns. And, because these medium towns are subjected with a very singular driven imagination that, that is coming from the metropolis, especially like Mumbai. And many other features which are replicated, along with many other anomalies are replicated unknowingly. So this is a very important position that we have taken, that it can't be one size fit for all. One has to really bring in the various characteristics of all the cities, in India. So in that way, yes, it's an academic reflection. It's not criticizing, but it is saying that it's still not accomplished, in a way that we could imagine urbanism in India. Next slide, please. So historically, the urban planning process has witnessed, several paradigms. I mean, if I have to name few, satellite cities industrial cities, knowledge cities, the global imperatives that are operating on our urban policies, which is talking about spatial economic zone and all kind of things, and now resilient cities. So question is that, how this various paradigms are operating and transforming India, I mean Indian cities. And that has been a kind of a very important question we had, that all these paradigms have existed at one point of time, and they operated, they dissected our cities, and what is expected from the smart city. Next slide, please. I think 12, slide number 12. So the emerging concern of these planning paradigms may not have anything in common. There is a conspicuous absence of city structured discourse to find a common parameter. It means what we should carry forward from the previous paradigm, and how do we kind of take it into or weave through the smart city mission. Instead, each paradigm dismisses the predecessor and not letting contribute to the maturing of urban planning. I think problem larger is the maturing of urban planning, because there are disparate conversation, dialogues looking at our cities. Next slide, please. The urbanism in India today are inspired by global symbols, models, and aspirations. Small and medium town in India, often labeled interchangeably as a second and third tier cities, with growing level of consumerism, what Binti just pointed out, widespread use of digital technologies, global linkages, and growing aspirations. I think this is the large driving force of transformation of our second tier and third tier cities. These are defined by UDPFI guidelines before 2014, and it brings a lot of changes, transformation, but it also brings anomalies, as I said. Next slide, please. The recent time has seen the shift in urban planning concern of our cities, especially second tier cities. The emerging paradigm of smart city mission is aspired to be moving towards formation of reactive, reflective, and knowledge-oriented society. The smart city mission is also expected to move from functional, hierarchical formation to a digitally networked cities. Now, this is something very, very important to me, because having studied historic cities across last 3 decades, and realized that these cities have a very interesting network, which integrating their livelihood, their social structure, their belief customs, and we are expecting that there will be a new network conditions that will be overlaid. It is assumed to have digital based structure and functional operation of city, along with controlling, monitoring, and integrating critical infrastructure of the city, which is understandable. In addition to that, it is expected to reconfigure the spatial transformation of urban form, new means of resolving complex urban issues of cities in India. Now, this is something where this book is bringing a dialogue that these cities have emerged. Each cities have their own history, own trajectory. You can't compare two cities, especially second tier cities in India. Even metros cannot be compared in that sense. So how this new paradigm will change the urban form? Is that one size fit for all is an appropriate way of moving forward? The second tier cities are often historic cities. Next slide, please. Such transformation often does not address the fundamental challenges of such cities, and often ignore the organic and historic character of such historic cities. Adding such layers of infrastructure that are disconnected from the core, resulting in spatial division, social disconnect between people, place, and occupation. Now, this is something central to our argument in the book, that how do we, how historically these relationships have evolved, that is place, people, and occupations, and how this, what is it expected from smart city mission. I think there are no case studies, there are no pilot projects taken over, and I think often as I see various smart cities across India, visited several 5-6 cities, I think it's a city beautiful movement of early 19s which has emerged, re-emerged in a new avatar. In this context, the smart city is a conceptual model and not a technique for planning, where digital data is an asset, an important planning tool. It is also envisaged that such model of understanding the urban form being progressive, transparent, and information-oriented planning trajectories. I mean, which is understandable in some way that you're moving towards a more democratic place, transparent, progressive looking, with integrated infrastructure. But that's not the only reality of the city. That's one side of the reality. The urbanization trends of metros and medium-sized towns are encountered with archetypical issues of conflict, traversing environment, livelihood, informal housing, depleting livability index, reduction in affordability, and all kind of things acting, on cities simultaneously. Would it be slightly exaggeration to state that cities are being re-engineered with a techno-utopian discursive construct to promote neoliberal rationalities, or is it a narrow way of comprehending the complex urban phenomena, or is it a new paradigm based on neoliberal thinking, or is it the fact that current mode of urban transformation models is subjecting Indian second-tier cities to be a laboratory for aspiring to be global? Now, this is a very important argument for us, because what are we looking at? It's a paradigm, it's a trajectory, or it's a laboratory. If these questions are not clear, then politics of technical epistemological understanding of smart city initiative needs to be examined. How every day is seen in permanent state of emergency. I think that's very common to all the cities in India. We encounter new emergencies every day, and these new emergencies are the planning paradigm. And urgency becomes the paradigm of action, or how visual technologies are central to understanding of ontological and practical configuration of our cities, or how data drives the urban transformation, hierarchies, and rearrangement of urban life. I mean, we do not have any idea how these data-driven cities are going to rearrange our life. The book attempts to raise some fundamental questions on such new planning initiative and the role of urban planning and urban design in new transformation initiation, amounting to spatial and cultural transformation of our second-tier cities. So what you see on the screen is two sides of the city. One is what the dashboard that is going to really tell us how your infrastructure governance will be controlled. And on the other side of it, the urban form is something that we live every day. We experience every day, which includes your community, your livelihood, the informality, the social cultural paradigms. Now, if this is divided, if it is only kind of a superimposed with a kind of a dashboard approach, what will happen to our cities? This is the question this book is attempting to raise. Next slide, please. So this is one of the concluding slide of the chapter, that there are some common parameter which we can conclude from understanding of our cities. And when you take any second-tier cities or third-tier cities, you will encounter at least 7 of these issues which are central to the cities. And what smart city needs to understand, that there is a strong interdependency of all this parameter. It means I have to think about mobility and network when I'm focusing on livelihood or I'm focusing on public realm. I have to think about ecology when I'm addressing heritage and tourism. Or if I think of institutions and governance, I need to talk about mobility network or a livelihood, or many other parameters that are enumerated here. So this is a very important trajectory. I think in smart city mission, one is to emphasize this relationship. And some cities already have strong relationship, and some cities have some relationships are weak. I think smart cities need to address this weak relationship and bring in a kind of a cohesiveness in the kind of a understanding of our second tier cities. Now I will hand it over to Binti from this slide onward.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The slides are moving very fast.
Yes.
So yes.
Right slide. Okay.
That's okay. That's okay. I can just go on. So where are the cities in India heading? So yes, some of the key points that based on our research and try to kind of collate them in bullets. Of course, this, as I said, the research is far from over, and these are questions that we just try to highlight, which should be taken up in some, further investigation is needed for this. So competitive federalism is one feature. Privatization is one feature. There is a lot of emphasis on administrative efficiency. This whole narrative stands on efficiency, and questions of equity is, well, are not really thought about. So that is what there's a lot of talk now that I see in all the urban scholarship that has developed globally, is that there is no escape from the questions of urban equality and environment. So whatever we are thinking, whatever the current imagination of city building or planning is, cannot escape these questions. And the pandemic has kind of re-strengthened that belief that no matter how much we go, I mean, I always go back to the Club of Rome and the Stockholm meeting and 1972, which says that, yeah, there are limits to growth. I really would like us to sit down and kind of reimagine our urban trajectories as to where we are going. So yes, we have an entire section devoted to the questions of informality that has been left unanswered in this narrative in chapter 4 or chapter 5 of our book. I would, yes, next slide please, Arjun. So yes,
This right, 20th slide. Binti ma'am, you have gone on mute, Binti ma'am.
yes, sorry, there's a connectivity issue. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so a smart city mission, of course, I don't know, I cannot really come into any conclusive, I don't want to make any conclusive overstatement, but based on our research, we can definitely make these points that, and also the secondary literature that I have relied upon as evidence collected in this book. There are, these are a plethora of random initiatives across cities of India. There are multitudes of players and private players especially. And cities have actually transformed into laboratories for experiments. A lot of things are happening, and they're all over the place. They are sporadic, and we really don't have a common pattern. It will really take time to understand what are these patterns and what are these trends. It has been 5 years since the launch. I mean, it's not 5 years now, it is 7 years maybe. And so a full-blown critical analysis or to arrive at a conclusive overstatement may not be right, but we can just highlight these points, the points that have been missed out, so that, you know, there is time for course correction. There is time for including the other voices that have been left out from this narrative. There is there's time so that, you know, we can correct our misplaced priorities, and a holistic vision is restored. And the essay stands on projects that appear to be too small, sporadic in nature. In many cities, they have not really gone beyond the pilot stage, or they are just stuck halfway. We have evidence for this in the book itself. And of course, silent on crucial questions like rights, entitlements, and of course, one may say counter that this is outside the purview of the smart city narrative. I get that. But when cities are subjected to massive transformation, it includes everybody and it includes all kinds of spaces. So I'll just draw your attention I mean, we also try to build this, the entire narrative of this book. We have tried to elucidate with the help of interesting examples and stories, so that, you know, the readers get the real examples in front of them. It's just not armchair theorists sitting and making all these theorizations. It is also backed by examples. Anyway, I would like to draw your attention to the contradictions. For instance, experiments are underway, especially in traffic management and police. You know, there's a lot of this deployment of technologies in these sectors. Safety and security is the prime. So surveillance, safety, and security. This is the new lexicon used to enable better performance of the sectors. Now, this in turn is envisioned to translate into smarter cities. For example, automatic number plate recognition can automate the process of traffic management and book vehicles that violate traffic rules along with video proof. Then there are intelligent digital sensors like bionic ears, that can help in policing. Now, there is heavy deployment of technologies in the urban mobility sector, yet there is hardly any thought for simple urban design interventions like wider sidewalks, safe streets for women, children, senior citizens, people with disabilities, and the last mile connectivity. You know, we talk of public transport, but we don't talk about intermediate public transport. So these are little things that we have tried to highlight in the book that would be maybe useful to inform policy. We don't know exactly. Also, there is a lot of you know, in use of very high-end expensive technologies in sectors like solid waste management, where really it is not needed. I mean, I have given a lot of, I quote from other studies to prove this point, but the thing is that there is kind of, you know, where is the money going? Where is the investment going? Where is it going in this sector and why in this sector? Even thing like when people are not even aware of, you know, segregating dry and wet waste, why are we putting in so much of money into, you know, creating those machines and then segregation? I mean, that can be done at the household level, and that is supposed to be done according to the solid waste management rules of 2000 and subsequently in 2016. So yes, all this kind of little examples, and of course, I'd like to quote Vivek Madhva, who is the distinguished fellow at Harvard Law School, who states that how a history major who has studied the Enlightenment or the rise and fall of the Roman Empire gains an insight into the human elements of technology and the importance of its usability. A psychologist is more likely to know how to motivate people and to understand what users want than is an engineer who has worked only in the technology trenches. Well, he may be a little biased. He adds that a musician or an artist is king in a world in which you can 3D print anything that you can imagine. So this is a quote that I borrowed from him in 2018 in one of the leading newspapers. And so what he's trying to say is that, you know, technology and the arts or humanities can really go together, can really converge. There are opportunities for future if we really look at the right places. And finally, I'd like to quote Mohammad Sharif, the first Asian woman to serve as executive director of the United Nations Human Settlements Program, who says that I think it's the human aspect that sometimes is lacking. For example, in urban planning, we talk about safe cities. To do this, we often put up the CCTV camera, all of that technology, but actually you can create a safe city through design if you're human enough, if you think hard about human nature and human needs. So of course, there's always this contradiction between which way to go. We go the Foucauldian way of having a panopticon, the CCTV camera watching us, or do we go the Jane Jacobs way of having eyes on the street? So yes, these are choices that we have to make for our cities. And no matter how well we are integrating these technologies, we also have to keep the questions of equity and environment in mind. That's about it. Do I have any other slide after this? Yes, so of course, yeah, the final comments, no, the contradictions, yes. So just draw your attention to some of these contradictions that we kind of raise in this book, especially in chapter 2 and the last chapter, and with examples to kind of validate our point that, see, this is how it is. In one sector, there's too much of uniformization. There is performance benchmarks, indices that have been developed to rank diverse cities with heterogeneous conditions along similar parameters. For example, I'll give you an example, the ease of living index that ranked cities on 15 parameters that came out in 2018. Now, it uses for economic ease, it says construction permits to rank cities on economy and development. Now, that would be a desirable parameter for a new urban center. But is it workable for an old city? So these are questions that we have to really think about. And of course, the last thing that I want to draw your attention to is that each city must capitalize on its strengths and build on its uniqueness, while at the same time, now smart city is saying all of that. Now this is a major contradiction. While smart city is saying all of that each city has to be unique, Jaipur has to be unique, Patna and Lucknow has to be unique and everything. But then actually you are subjecting all the cities to this immense pressure of actually enticing investments and growing their revenue model. So all of that are questions that we need to think about as urban stakeholders, and so that we can build better futures for tomorrow. Thank you very much. Yes. And just to draw your attention to this book, our book has been listed in the SDG online repository of the UN Habitat. So that is one recognition for the book. We have also discussed this book in many international universities in Europe. And we had plans to go to other universities, but the pandemic killed everything. So thank you very much for a patient hearing.
So thank you, Dr. Singh and Professor Parmar. It's a nice presentation, and really you have highlighted some of the important issues. You mentioned that the urbanism in India is inspired by the global aspirations. You mentioned about we know about how the present Indian the urban plan and policies, they are overwhelmingly influenced by these aspiration of making our cities world class. And you mentioned about the data-driven governance system of the smart cities, which the smart cities are applying, with the assumption that the ICT can improve the efficiency and accountability in the governance system. And also you mentioned about the creation of state-of-the-art infrastructure, which is very much central to the entire scheme of this smart city making. And again, this is done to make the cities attractive before the global capital, and to make the cities growth nodes. And also you highlighted the importance about the privatization, because the entire smart city mission, there is an overwhelming emphasis on this aspect of privatization. And also you draw our attention to the wider implications for all these important ramifications of smart city making on India's urban transformation. And also you mentioned about the importance of the history of urban planning. We need to know, because the smart city mission, they needs to be contextualized in the context of the specifics of the cities, especially how they are historically built and how do their spatial specificities gel with the basic tenets of the smart city mission. And we need to understand basically the interrelationship between the smart urbanism and the urban form, which are complex indeed. So we have also an eminent set of panelists with us. So I hope that they will also add some valuable comments or into your whatever you have said. So let me now first invite Professor Tathagata Chatterji to please chip in and have your comments. It's over to you, Professor Chatterji. Can you hear us? Professor Chatterji.
A minute.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Professor Soumyadip, and thank you, Dr. Binti Singh and Professor Parmar for very nice presentations. Now, coming to this issue of smart cities, yes, I agree that, I mean, the smart cities mission is very much a part of the aspirational India program. The mission was launched in 2015, and now as we are in the 6th year in the running, I think, I mean, it is time to raise some questions about the efficiency of the mission. I mean, given that the complexities involved in India's city systems, it is unrealistic to expect, any spectacular improvements, but nevertheless, I think, it is time to take stock. What the mission had accomplished in terms of concrete measurable terms for the sake of more evidence-based policy making. Initially, when the smart city movement was launched, it created a lot of civic pride in a city like Bhubaneswar, where I am based in. But also over the next years, now the questions are being raised whether the smart cities has really lived up to it. The smart cities has certainly managed to bring advanced digital technologies in the city arena, various areas of urban management. The command and control centers had been an effective data integration platform, which had been quite useful in monitoring the lockdown regulations or in identifying the COVID hotspots or delivering relief supplies in some cities like in Jaipur, Raipur, etc. But if we look at the overall investments in new technologies, which are part of the pan-city component, are only 20% of the smart cities budget. And that too, here to the lion's share of the budget goes into traffic flow metering. Now the question here is, had this improved the traffic conditions? Has it improved the traffic speeds? Or where the traffic flow metering imposed or deployed, are they the right places? In Bhubaneswar, for example, the traffic meters have been deployed along Janpath, which is the main shopping street, and has got a very mixed traffic. Now the question here is, would increase in the vehicular speed in such a mixed traffic road, it's really desirable because that is a main shopping street, and there pedestrianization or more slower modes of traffic are perhaps more desirable, more citizen friendly traffic. Every road cannot be a highway. And another point is the 80% of the smart city budget are in the ABD component, the area-based development, which serves basically a very, very small part of the city. Again, talking about Bhubaneswar, the smart city, the area-based development component focuses on the master canteen and the Janpath corridor area, which is just about 3 to 4% of the city's area, and already the most developed part of the city. So it is creating some sort of an imbalance within the city, that pouring in more money into an area which is already more developed rather than developing the less developed part of the city. When the smart cities scheme was proposed, that time it was said that, these areas would be lighthouses and trigger similar kind of developmental impulses in other parts of the cities. But I think, if we are to have a trigger urban renewal in the city, then it needs to be part of an overall master planning framework and should not be driven to just from the market forces, but rather, it should be planned and integrated in an overall planning framework of the city in a very determined manner. But more important question is the smart cities mission has created a completely new institutional architecture in governance by setting up the special purpose vehicles. Are they really necessary? Would not the same thing been accomplished through existing institutional frameworks? Almost every smart city SPV, it is the chairman of the development authority or the commissioner of the municipal corporation who holds the chairman of the SPV and the managing director of the SPV positions. So it is basically the same two persons holding double positions. So what really are we getting? What new we are getting? So rather, instead, we are duplicating more institutional complexities. I think it is time to measure the performances of the cities through more direct measurable indicators, like after the smart cities came into being, whether there had been improvement in the air quality, whether there had been water improvement in the water delivery by tracking through water metering done under the PAN City, the SCADA water metering systems put into place, or by whether the sewage treatment has improved by putting this GPS monitoring of the solid waste collection systems. So I think, we need to ask some hard questions on this point. I think at this point, there is a new initiative launched by the ministry regarding the municipal performance monitoring for the smart cities, which has just been published a couple of months back. I think that is a very important step. And we need to ground the smart cities mission in a, instead of being so very abstract, to more quantitative and verifiable and measurable terms through indicator-oriented improvement strategy. I think I would stop for the moment and let other voices.
Yeah, so thank you, Professor Chatterji, for making your insightful comments. And you have rightly mentioned that we need to really ground our smart city experience indeed, and also we need to seriously rethink, like when we are talking about the smart cities, for whom we want to make our cities smart. And as you mentioned, that 80% of the smart fund of the smart cities, they are actually attributed to the area-based development ABD program. So that means, are we making cities smart, or are we actually interested to building up certain smart pockets within the cities? So these are some of the hard facts or hard realities which I think as a planner we need to think on, we need to deliberate on. So thank you once again. And now let me request Professor Gopa Samanta, who has the experience of studying or looking at the small and medium cities, because our speakers, they mentioned repeatedly about the small and medium cities, and she has the experience of dealing, she's associated with also the suburban project of the Center for Policy Research, New Delhi. So may I now request Professor Gopa Samanta to share your thoughts. Yes,
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shomudi, for bringing me in here. And a big congratulations to Dr. Singh and Professor Parmar for this wonderful book. hoping to read it in as soon as possible for me. So I am speaking from my background as an urban geographer. I do not have any expertise in urban planning and architecture field, and my entire experience of working with the small towns. So I would, and as I was thinking that when the smart city mission came up in 2015, and I was reading about it and I was thinking about it and I was reflecting back to my own small towns where I work, like Hazaribagh in Jharkhand and Burdwan in Darjeeling or Burdwan in West Bengal, whatever it is. Or so I was thinking that there is some kind of problem, and I'm happy that you people have brought in those ideas here as well very brilliantly. So I would just, and I wrote a small piece in popular Bengali. I often choose for writing in Bengali because I'm located in a provincial university. If I write anything in English academic paper, which I have to do for my profession, but I prefer to write in Bengali so that my students read. So I wrote a piece on smart cities that time, and I was doing a little bit of research on that. And what I found that actually this very idea smart city model, that package has come out, the history. It's basically Clinton Foundation with the Cisco company, IT company. They started looking for something as a sustainable solution for cities. Think about it. And then 2008, global crash of economy. And then other IT sectors were falling. So smart city package came up in 2010 as a model to rescue IT sector, to rescue global economy in different forms. So that's how we bought that argument that smart city could be a good solution for us. And I would like to brought in another perspective into it, because as a geographer and working with, we geographers work with a very holistic approach of looking at things. And I always had problem with this project orientation of urban planning. Like, IDS, if we start from master planning, then IDSMT, then actually JNNURM, Amrut or Smart City Mission, each and every, these are coming like a project. But where we can fit in, where as these authors have already pointed out that one size doesn't fit all. So where we can think about developing our cities irrespective of their size. So basically there are a few key components where we need to think about whether it is a metro city or a small city. That you have very rightly pointed out few contexts like ecology, mobility, and livelihood, etc., etc. So my problem is always with this project orientation, like JNNURM is going to give fund for transport sector or water infrastructure development sector to make the cities growth engine. And then we think about, no, we need a big data, we need a big governance structure. And for that, as Professor Chatterji has already pointed out, we are creating further and further inequalities within cities, even in case of Bhubaneswar, he has worked on. So I always had problem like this. Say, for example, if we think about one project is going to fund for urban infrastructure, like, transport and water infrastructure, and probably most of the cities, they have a different agenda, different priorities. So these priorities, how we are going to fit in the priorities of so diverse priorities of each and every cities, and how we can fit into this project orientation of planning proposal. And here I would also like to point out at some point of time in understanding the cities better, I also started to work on the municipal financing, and Soumyadip is excellent in that field, but I'm not an economist, so I just try to understand a little bit of that. And I was thinking that why this tied fund? There is something called untied fund. More and more, we don't have any untied fund. When the fund is tied with a specific program and specific project, then we don't have devolution of power for each and every municipal corporation or municipality, whatever it is. They can develop their whatever is necessary for development of that city. Now, say for example, if we give for the water infrastructure, but already some cities are better in water infrastructure, they probably need for something else like solid waste management, you know. So these tied funds and these project orientation of urban development proposal, as we are heading more and more, and with the neoliberal economy, these are pushing us for, you know, we had to buy the package of, you know, smart city in a globalized urban world. And then if we follow up exactly the path, then we see that there is always, like, you know, more and more people will coming to the cities, and then we need to build our cities, and we are continuously shifting our priorities to accommodate more and more upper middle class and rich people into the cities, and we're pushing the informal sector workers, poor migrants out of the city. Say for example, when we had this housing project, urban housing project, and then I was thinking that how many people has their entitlement to land? You know, now you see that the government is changing from that, you know, perspective of urban housing project to urban rental housing project, which probably is more important. So I hope that the government or you know, urban planners and policymakers of this country will learn at a time that India is a very India country with a so diverse context of cities. It's not about only small and medium and metro, it's not about the size, but it is also the specific context. Like, you know, when we think about Darjeeling, and if we think about again a smaller city where the water is so available, so it's not that, you know, even the context, the places where these cities are located, these are very, very important. If we are not open enough to address those agenda, then it's a problematic situation we are heading to. So I think, I hope, I'm sure that Professor Parmar and Dr. Singh, they have nicely brought out that contradictions. You see that we want something like, you know, in the name of smart city, we are just beautifying some areas of the city, some token project here and there. It is not going to work out. Even for a whole city, if we leave 80% for doing something under the smart city project, and if we focus on 20%, so it is not even going to cater one single city together, you know? So it's a problematic situation. I'm looking forward to reading your book, and I think I should stop here and then.
Thank you, Professor Samanta, for again raising some very important concerns. For example, you have rightly pointed out the importance of the problematization of this entire project-oriented urban planning processes. And there, I think we need to seriously think of like how far the socio-technical imaginaries under the smart city discourses are distributed, in the sense that whether it envisioned benefits are actually available to all the citizens or not, and how far those processes are participatory, in the sense whether the common people, they are actually getting some opportunity to reflect their voices, to present their voices in the smart city mission imaginaries and all these things. So these are all very important issues. And also thank you once again. And now let me invite Mr. Samir Unale, who is associated with the municipal administration of the government of Maharashtra. So and one of the major criticism against the smart city mission is that it is basically consultant driven, and it actually subvert the authority of the local democratic institutions. So so I think Samirji will be in a better position to shed some more lights on the importance role of those SPVs and related institutions. So it's over to you, Samirji.
Very good evening.
Ready? Okay.
Good evening. So, allowing to share my personal reflections on some of the experiences of smart cities. As we have known that it's almost now 7 years have gone in which the smart city mission was visualized. I think it was from September 2014, the initial consultative process was started, and the smart city mission in its renewed form came up initially around 100 more than 100 bigger cities of India have been covered, apart from other state capitals. If and other important cities of India. So I think smart city mission has been very widely talked, largely focused on even academic circles, because it did give a very different paradigm, an option for managing the Indian cities. As I had shared earlier, that somehow, the ideals of democratic decentralization, the romanticism associated with the national movement, knowingly, unknowingly mixed up managing city and the other political and ideological issues. So I think this intermixing to an extent has been allowed to be, decoupled by the framework of smart city. Uh, Managing cities at now, as I keep on saying, that Indian cities are will be the third largest country in the world if you really look at the populations, and we will have to try out new models and new approaches, new paradigms to allow the cities to engage with their challenges. Now, if you look at it, if you look at, in my view, what could be the chief ingredients or the main ingredients of a smart city? First, of course, is the SPV, the special purpose vehicle, which is being devised for that. And secondly, of course, it is just not the smart city is just not about command control center or just not about IT. I think it tries to encompass and incorporate all possible new ideas and technologies available to make the life of cities more livable. So there would be nothing. I don't think there should be any reason to go the Luddite sort of version, saying that all technology is bad, or all the talks of extreme distrust on technology, the ideas of digital dictatorship or surveillance capitalism. I think these are one of the perspective or the way of looking at the potential with the technology and the current cities have. So I think that is one focus that somehow gets on repeated in the various the discussions when we discuss about smart cities. So I personally feel it is it has brought in freshness into the traditional way of handling city issues. So the municipal government is one part, and it is not always the entire city. Let us be very clear, because the municipal government is not more than 0.5% of the city's population, even if you consider all the employees and class 4 employees. And obviously, that single institution would, of course, the core issues and the core competency of the municipal government will be in the political and democratic decentralization that we are talking. Yes, it will be there. But now, as in fact earlier also we had shared, that the complexes, the challenges are so complex, the technology is so complex that as we in management sciences or even in public administration said, that what is administrative development? So one of the approach of administrative development goes back to Kant's days, which we talk of is structural differentiation and functional specialization. So if you apply that also to the various institutions which are operating in the cities, then obviously we'll be requiring more and more specialized institutions which will be catering to those ideas, those challenges more efficiently. And of course, we would require some framework which will bring all these institutions together. And this, I think, is one of the function which the special purpose vehicle of the of this smart city can play. Because the entirety of, if you want to if you want to take a water or remove your garbage, in dumping entire thing on the municipal body, in my view, is a 2-century-old concept, and we will have to think of newer ideas and new models. And in that broader framework, I think smart city is still a new experiment, because it's just around 6 to 7. I mean, most of the SPVs are formed around 5 to 6 years, and I think that is a very small duration to see whether the experiment has been succeeded or not. So moving from this institutional, innovation, which the SPV is, if you look at if you try to have an overview of the various projects and move and have take a bird's eye view on the various projects, what are the other distinguishing features that you can see in smart cities? Well, of course, it's the consultative process. Now, earlier also, I think it might be repetition for some of our panelists as well as our viewers who have probably heard an earlier webinar that we had on having multiple agencies working in itself is not bad. So what is required is greater communication, greater coordination, and here the seamless digital experience of a city. It might be central government, it might be state government, it might be local government, it might be corporate, it might be NGOs, it might be voluntary organizations, gender issues, all. So this the power of technology needs to be harnessed for solving the challenges that a city is going to face. I think that that broader overview of providing a platform and getting building a coalition for resolving the challenges of the city and surmounting the challenges of that city would be facing. I think is also a broader framework which is behind the smart city concept and ideas. Third, of course, would be the framework of how have the correlationship of the various organs in the city or the various institutions in the city vis-a-vis smart city SPV and vis-a-vis the municipal body. Now, as I keep on saying, managing a city is a techno-managerial challenge. You will have to accept it. Trying to look any and everything from the political scientist ideas of democratic decentralization and then the power structure, I think is one way of looking at it, but it's not the totality of the way. It can give us certain ideas on inclusion and having greater reach and greater participation, greater engagement. But as I keep I do feel that just voting once in 5 years to an institution and then forgetting for next 5 years is not real democratic organization. So beyond the political vote once in 5 years framework, we require greater engagements and greater engagements and greater opportunities for the individual to experience this city, and also that symbiotic relation that exists between the city and an individual is also an idea that needs to be considered in our the discussions that we're doing in smart city. And in this framework, in fact, there was a concept, we had an idea, we had tried of issuing an IPO of the smart city company and giving each and every property owner or a slum owner at least a token share of that. So the entire narrative that is being built up could have an ideological, prejudices or political agendas or whatever, or strong experiences. But we require a very, very open mind that is free of prejudice, that is free of ideology, that is free of narrative, to really look at the potential and the capability of an institution, which in this case is a smart city SPV, handling the challenges. Because we are not at luxury now to contemplate and speculate as to what would happen. We require very concrete actions now. We require very specific, logical, concrete actions from all the stakeholders to uh, process how the city would be moving ahead. We are right now, everyone is facing the challenges of a pandemic, which was a respiratory pandemic, as we call this COVID. And we might come up, well, just yesterday we had a strong cyclone going, just skimming through the Caribbean Sea and very close to Mumbai. Actually, had it had a different the direction, things would have been very difficult. So the frequency and the intensity of the challenges that a city will be facing is now not what we had 20 years back. The intensity will be more, the frequency will be more, and therefore we require this. We again come back to the idea of resilience of an institution to to face to the challenges. And here again the typical shall I say clerical or bureaucratized or way of functioning may not be the best way to work on it. This again, I think, should be considered as one of the possibility of a smart city company SPV, of reacting to this challenges and the inherent resilience of the city to address that. I think I spoke more on the institutional aspect of smart city because the other issues are being fairly frequently discussed. I think a technology can be adopted even by a private company, even by an NGO, even by a not-for-profit, even by a philanthropy, and so even by a SPV. So adopting a technology may not be the distinguishing factor of any of any smart city, but I would summarize this that all the possible technologies now needs to be harnessed, because what after all technology is it's our it's our heritage of ideas. It's the capability of our species, it's the potential of a community. And why should there be hesitation for utilizing it for the best of the city? And of course, and the last part I would like to develop on was the relationship of an individual in a smart city, or whether the company structure under the Companies Act, whether it will alienate the poorer people, and whether it will this will lead to a loss of power, a sense of loss of power for them. So that's precisely was the reason why we had suggested that we could have an IPO of a city, and each and every family or a property card holder from Juggi Jopdis to the flat can be made a partner of the smart city by giving them the mandatory shares of the smart city, which will be direct engagement. Because I still feel voting once in 5 years is not a model that can work for cities. It is necessary in a national and state legislature, but for city level we require greater innovation and flexibility. And in this framework, a smart city experiment, I think, has been quite successful as far as other, even the lastly, I would just like to add upon the response of the smart city assets to COVID has been documented well by many people. In fact, the even the WHO and even the national government now talks of the Mumbai model, which relies very essentially, lots of it depends upon the use of IT and artificial intelligence and even machine learning algorithms. So that also shows that the adoption of technology is not something that is counter to the poor. It is in fact, the Dharavi model, even the Maharashtra model, which is now being talked of vis-a-vis responding to COVID, does involve a very high use of digital assets and the control room. So I think even it has been, one can say that this response in the Maharashtra model of COVID management did prove that technology can be used very effectively for handling a city challenges, and also considering the issues of the inclusion. So I think that was a brief, there was some of my brief personal reflections on this idea. I congratulate Parmar sir and Binti ma'am for writing a good book on smart cities mission, because somehow the and academics association with the real problems of the nation have been very limited in my perception. And this is a very good experiment, and I'm sure the book will lead to further writings and further interest in this very important and critical sector of our national life. So thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samiji. It's really, we are actually having a very hard choice, hard decision to make. Like given the local capacity problem and also the enormous challenges that the Indian cities are facing. So it is indeed pragmatic to allow the SPVs to work on the smart proposal, but at the same time, given the informal nature of the relationship that the urban poor they enjoy or they maintain with the democratic setup of the cities, so maybe we need to think of how to make the SPVs work in consonance and not at the exclusion of the elected representative of the city governments. So thank you once again. And now let me invite Survi Agarwal, who is the researcher at MIT Civic Data Design Lab, Jaipur. If you please have your comment, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in this panel today. So as has been covered by the very interesting presentation we were given in the introduction of this discussion, smart cities really is a neoliberal approach, right? And the smart cities mission in India is this kind of new way for the government to almost pump money into urban development in India. So I think there's advantage in that, at least, that there's a new upheaval and new thinking for doing urban development in India. But how that's being implemented now is, I think, what we're trying to discuss, right? So also then to talk essentially about the relationship between technologies and cities foundationally. I mean, technologies and cities have always worked in tandem with each other. If you look at 50 years ago from now and look at the idea of cars, we completely spun around all our ideas on urban development to kind of base that around cars, right? And now we're trying to solve all of those problems. And in the current times, as was correctly pointed out, with a lot of technocratic push by large technical companies, the new paradigm is digitization. And then the Smart Cities mission is trying to kind of incorporate that idea of digitization in development, right? But I think the fundamental question here is the basics of urban development are always going to remain same. So democracy, equitable development, development of the needy areas or the areas that are not as developed as, say, the metropolitan cities. And I think that's also where kind of the focus on the second tier cities come in. So how do we then ensure that technology is used in the correct way to facilitate these changes, right? I mean, specifically, say, digital technology. And I think here's where I will reflect on my experiences for the past year. So I've been working with the digital city agenda of Amsterdam. I'm also working in smart cities in Kenya, and then I've also been researching about smart cities in India, and I'm going to try and kind of very quickly take you through a journey of cross reflections between these contexts and what that has taught me. So for instance, in the Amsterdam context, now it's one of the global leaders in smart city development, and they have really integrated a lot of digital technology in how they operate the city. So e-governance platforms, but also sensors, actuators, and now they're trying to incorporate democratic values. So right now the systems are like black box systems. There's a sensor somewhere, the people on the streets, and they don't have an interconnection. They don't have information about what's happening with the sensor. So now they're trying to make it democratic and integrate values like data privacy and data minimization, and trying to think about how exactly to place technology in that context. And I think what we can learn from that is we are at this very crux of transformation. I mean, we're grappling with these new ideas at this point, right? Sensors, and then we also have, say, on the contrast, informal settlements, which don't even have an address board to their door. And then, we have a city like Chennai, which is the most heavily surveilled city in the world with 654 cameras per square kilometer. So we grapple with this kind of dichotomy in our urban existence. And then what is the role of technology to play as an equalizer in this context, right? And how can technology become a tool to complement places where there's physical infrastructure that's lacking? Again, kind of bringing the example of missing address points. So there's this association in Delhi now called, in Pune now called Shelter Associations, and they're trying to collaborate with Google to give address pins to all of these people in informal settlements and have them access services like Amazon delivery or Swiggy delivery, and that really is an example of how digital technology can be used to complement lack for physical infrastructure, where the government has not been, say, able to intervene and equalize these people in the development. And in other cases, we have examples, as was mentioned earlier, like vacuum-based sewer system. I mean, do we really need a vacuum-based sewer system when we have such pressing issues? So I'm also currently with Dr. Binti Singh writing another book now. It's called Urban Digitization, our future approach to value-based frameworks. And in these value-based frameworks, we are trying to define how can you ensure the correct technologies are adopted and implemented in cities. So I mean, when you have a value-based framework, it helps the decision makers pick the right things. And also then kind of talking about this in hierarchies, right? I mean, what in the scale of a country like India, what can function at the national level? So political ideas which get transformed into values, democracy, secularity, equality. These are, the larger ideas which can then adhere to a value-based framework. But then, for instance, currently now we have, for citizen participation, a national level platform. I mean, for the scale of our country, what relevance does a national level platform for citizen engagement really mean? I mean, how can you reflect on like a problem in a small area on this large national level platform? So the scales on which these things need to work need to get broken down. I mean, perhaps a value-based framework can work at the larger country level, but then at the city level, it's really going to be about the integration of all of these small municipalities and different bodies of the government and how they kind of come together and collaborate with their data. And I think those are some ideas I've been now kind of engaging with, in, what could be solutions to all of these questions that we've been raising today.
Thank you. Thank you for raising so many questions. And yes, indeed, digitalization definitely has certain specific advantages, but at the same time, we need to know how to better use that digitalization in order to make our cities inclusive, make our cities sustainable, make our cities resilient. So, well, thank you, all the panelists. Like now, we already have a host of issues. So let me now go back to today's two speakers, Professor Manoj Parmar and Dr. Binti Singh, to respond to the different issues which have been raised by our panelists. So it's over to you, Professor Parmar.
We are. I come from a urban design field, and we're trained to look at the spatial formation of city, and then through that, design-centric ideas, we venture into these ideas of governance, the finance, and all kind of right to the cities, and gender issues and livelihood and things like that. These are the some of this important thing that we are raising it. Yes, this in a one book one cannot really address, but this book for us it's a starting point. And I think the way this various paradigms that are constantly being imposed, the urban planning process is becoming more and more complex and more denser. So our current book, which we are looking at the resilience paradigm and southern urbanism. Now what exactly we are trying to pitch is that some of this digital infrastructure, can that be moved towards a resilience paradigm? Can something the urban planning can kind of look at this process even more in a complex way? And of course Samir Unhale raised some fundamental grounded issues. I think he raised this point that academia and the governance kind of a thing, if they are able to create that dialogue. To us, I think this is something key to our academics, that how do we create that dialogue? And even if it is a area-based approach, how do we integrate people? How do we create a local area-based kind of a development plan? How do we create the sense of ownership to that even at that scale? And the whole smartening process can start with that, and as I said, that this book is actually not critiquing any of this effort, but it's only try to push towards more integrated approach. An integrated approach, again, it's not a singular, it's always in flux, and more complex ideas will emerge. As someone said correctly, that urban complexity is irreducible. It's never going to get reduced. It's going to get more and more complex, and more challenges are thrown upon urban planners, urban designers, that how do we create embedded condition all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Parmar. So now let me request Dr. Binti Singh to share her views. Yes.
I think Professor Parmar has already summed up. So this book is just a starting point. and our research is far from over. And we really are, we are trying to, my first bridge I built, because I started as a social sciences student, I have a BA degree from Presidency College, Calcutta, followed by Calcutta University Sociology, and then MPhil in Planning and Development. No, why I'm telling you this, because I have to give you a bit of the history in order to explain to you why we have landed up here. So I have an MPhil in Planning and Development from IIT Bombay, and we were essentially taught. It was a very eclectic program. So we had economics, we had statistics, we had everything. And while at the back end of that course, I was doing slum rehabilitation projects in the city of Mumbai, and how different players are implementing this in different pockets of Mumbai. So that's how my interaction with the built environment started. At one point, I realized that, social scientist, whether I'm an economist or whether I'm a sociologist or a political scientist, I'm not really able to get the full story if I don't get the person who is actually interacting with the space on a regular basis. And that is the architect, and that is the urban designer. And that's how it kind of enticed me to talk more to these people who are in the business of doing things. And we are more in the talking of doing things. We are more at an ideational level. And that's how, I got enticed into this, what should I say, more professionals who are working with the built environment on an everyday basis. So they are more aware of it materially. The urban form, how does it feel? We don't know it much because we are at a distance. So that's how this collaboration exercise started. And that is precisely the reason that I have chosen KRVIA to teach, because that allows me that kind of a diversity to interact with people of different, I have to interact with landscape architect and urban designer and conservation. So I learn from them. I mean, my takeaway from them is much more than maybe perhaps whatever they learn from me. So that's how, so this integration, and we are gradually moving towards this. And I see this process when we first started our paper way back in 2014. It was on redevelopment story in the city of Mumbai, and Professor Parmar and I did that. It was a very grounded, empirically grounded. So I'm more an ethnographer. So my research, whatever I have done so far, it's more empirically grounded. It is more of an inductive. It follows an inductive approach. So I do my cases and then I come to some conclusions. So my daughter keeps telling me that that's why nobody reads you. So anyway, so I'm just trying to build those bridges with institutions across disciplines, and also talk to as many number of people who are engaged with the urban story of India. Because the more voices, then only we can move towards what everybody's talking about, the integrated urban sciences. It is we who have to build the pedagogy of the integrated urban sciences. And of course, people like Samir Unale have been very supportive in this process, because my first interaction with Samir Unale was that, yes, this is a person who is with the business of everyday governance, but he is also very erudite, and he knows what is happening in the real world of urban scholarship, and he really wants to bring those ideas. He's willing to listen, he's willing to build those bridges with other people, especially academia. So I have long given up my this position of sitting outside and criticizing. I have long given it up. I see more as myself in a position that is trying to understand and learn from people from various disciplines and various geographies, so that we can have a robust scholarship on Southern urbanism, which is missing at the moment. It is there, but even the ones who are contributing to the scholarship are placed, north of the hemisphere. So I'm not really sure as in how really they are connected to the realities of grassroots level India. So, there is a lot of responsibility on us to come up with this robust scholarship. So therefore, young scholars like Surabhi, And many more have joined this kind of our research agenda, and we are taking it forward. We are taking it forward in whatever little way we can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's really important, like as you rightly pointed out, that all our urban theories or the urban practices which we in India we follow, they are mostly based on the urban theories which are mainly developed in the global north. So we really do not know whether those theories are fit enough to explain the socioeconomic realities of the cities in global south. So, and also as you rightly mentioned, that we need a transdisciplinary approach to know our cities better. And if we can know our cities better, then only we'll be able to plan for those cities. So absolutely. And so just to before winding up this particular talk today, let me now just again go back to our panelists, all the discussions, if they could please share their final thoughts in a minute or so each. So it's first, I request Professor Tathagata Chatterji, if you please just share your final thoughts in a minute or so.
Yes, this has been really a very fruitful discussion. And my overall thought is that we definitely require technology. You know, I mean, in today's context, we really cannot close ourselves to technology. But technology is not a panacea. Technology is a tool. As we had seen in various smart city projects, the command and control center can do a lot of good work during this pandemic, and in Bhubaneswar context, it has also become the key nodal center for disaster management by having an integrated data platform. So we definitely require more technology for the betterment of the city, but we also need to ground the projects in a more data-driven outcome for better policy making, so that, you know, I mean, we have a tangible outcome that, I mean, what we get out of the project. And the money that is being invested in the smart cities, so it should lead to definite improvement in certain measurable parameters of the city. And in that sense, as I had said, that service level benchmarking started at a national level. It's a very good initiative in this manner. But also the point that Professor Gopa had mentioned, and that's also a very, very important point, that, I mean, all these missions are triggering towards a project-centric approach. But we need to have this project-centric approach linked up with the overall planning system of the city, so that, you know, I mean, the projects are not seen as in isolation, but rather as a part of an integrated planning framework. Otherwise, you know, I mean, what would happen that, I mean, there is a money in this project, so people will go chasing for that project, whether there is a specific need for that project or not. I think on that point, we need to have more discussion, and also about the institutional architecture. There is, I mean, a lot to be discussed on that front. I think I'd stop here.
Thank you, Professor Chatterji. Now I request Professor Samanta to share some of our remarks in a minute or so.
Thank you, Soumyadip. Actually, I would fully agree with Dr. Singh on the point that we need to better understand how our cities work. And you know, for India is a very specific country. If we take the urban development agenda all over the world in different countries, India is a very specific case, because if we really try to understand cities better way, the way actually Binti is from a sociologist perspective, and I, although my professional training is as a geographer, but more and more I started understanding cities with more qualitative methods of talking with the people, how the city works, what is important, what is not important, rather than more data orientation to more dialogue orientation for understanding cities. And there we have a big problem. Like if you are working, because my expertise is always constrained with the language itself. You know, India is a country with so many states. We have all different languages spoken in different cities. And if you go to small and medium sized cities, then it is very difficult that you only know English for conversation with. Northern India is still better position, because at least the Hindi we can speak a little bit and we can do a good field research with that understanding. But if I think about working in Mizoram or somewhere in northeastern state or southern state, I will be stuck with that language barrier. So I would think that it is more important, if we really would like to understand cities which are smaller and which are more in number, rather than, we know that already big cities are declining in growth rate. So the future is in small cities in India. And if we really try to understand smaller cities, how it works and what is important policy we can think about, then we need more provincial scholars who has that capacity of making their dialogue in their own language. So that is very, very important, which I would say that it's a methodological problem, but it's my own understanding that that is also a very important perspective of understanding urban, how we make the dialogue in urban studies. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Professor Samanta. Now I request Samirji to just
thank you
say a
very
few
much.
words in a minute or so.
Yeah, thank you. I think the concept, the arrival of this concept and paradigm of smart city is only effectively 4 to 5 years old, and it will have to be given time to show its contribution, what it can do. Number one. Number two, the issues of inclusion and engagements and participation, and the digital divide as it exists, and the ramification of that on the livability of a city, I think is a valid point. And I think the digital reach is quite significant, at least in the smart cities area. In the smart cities, the digital reach is quite significant. And I believe that this idea which has been introduced in urban India will have a significant contribution in making livable cities, and making them more broad-based and engagement-oriented is something that we will have to work on, and I think still a lot of work needs to be done. So thank you, Soumyadip ji, on that.
So thank you, Samirji, and now it's to Survi. If it's yes, Survi, yes. If you could share your final thoughts.
Yeah. So I think this has also been a very educating experience for me to attend this and kind of hear everybody's thoughts on this, and get a very grounded understanding of what's happening on policies and on the ground level reality. But again, the idea I'd like to finish at is I'm very thankful that this book kind of presents an overview of what's been happening in India on the smart cities, especially like the first phase of it. And it's a very great go-to resource to quickly get an overview of the agendas and the aspirations of the smart city mission. And as was just pointed out, I think a key to making this work is to integrate citizens from the very get-go of the process, but also cross-educate them from the very get-go of the process, because these are new ideas for people who are already familiar with the field, as this panel stands. But I mean, these ideas are completely unfamiliar and dense for people on the streets. So how do you kind of create this dialogue, this healthy dialogue with people on the streets? How do you make them a part of the process? How do you make effective integration and discussions? I mean, a lot of times technology tends to solve for efficiency, right? And democratic processes at their core are about discussions, and that stretches out the process sometimes. So, in trying to integrate efficiencies, how do we not program out discussions? How do we keep discussions and public discourse central while also integrating technology into the challenges? And yeah, that's where I'd like to end, and also again congratulate to the brilliant book.
Thank you, Survi. And just to say, if I not summing up, like I think from today's discussion, one takeaway is that whatever opportunities which are available under the Smart Cities mission, they should be exploited to strengthen the potentials of the city governments into an effective, well-resourced and democratically accountable institutions. And for that, the language and practice of making equitable and right-based decisions on urban planning and design should feature prominently in the Smart Cities mission discourse. So I think that could be one of the approach we should deliberate on. And once again, I congratulate both Professor Parmar and Dr. Binti Singh for their wonderful book, and I look forward to reading them. And also, I eagerly waiting for their next book, which I think we will again have an opportunity to listen to them. And now I request Dr. Arjun Kumar, who is the director of IMPRI, to share his views and formally give the vote of thanks.
Not any views, but
okay.
Let me just summarize how did we come to the topic. So Smart Cities mission really come up from the Western concept, IBM and other in early 2008. And as Unale sir really highlighted that we have been coping with this idea since the last decade. And whether these are lighthouses or not, given the Indian context. So I would also like to really congratulate Prof Manoj Parmar and Dr. Binti Singh for coming out with the book. And I so much look forward to their next book, which focuses on urban and digital. We have our government has also come up with National Urban Digital Mission, NUDM, so it becomes more important now. Niti Aayog has also come up with National Data Analytics Platform. We have also data. So that digital for really becoming important. And we all look forward to having more continuation of this work, a very intellectual work, very multidimensional also. So once again, let me congratulate from all of us and those who will be watching it to the authors of the book. And on behalf of Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies at IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, we thank all of you for attending this, our series of conversation, the State of Cities, #City Conversation with Dr. Soumyadip Chattopadhyay. And for the talk today, India's Smart Cities Mission Lighthouses, we really thank our speakers, Professor Parmar and Dr. Singh, and all of our panelists, Tathagata sir, Professor Samanta, Unale sir, and Tikendra sir could not join. And thank you, sir, also for joining. And with that, I wish you all a very good health and have a nice evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity, Arjun. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Please take care.